Hey everyone, welcome to Shooting Illustrated Interviews. I'm talking with Rob Latham. Now, Rob's nickname is the Great One. He's been a sponsored shooter for Springfield Armory for, oh gosh, quite a long time. And his nickname is the Great One because, well, there really isn't much he hasn't won. I think maybe there's like, I don't know, like the Croatian Nationals or something like that. You may have already, shooting that this summer for all I know, but
Yeah,
he's just the type of person who he's been at it for so long. He's been doing for so much. He's an outstanding competitive shooter. But more than that, he's a great teacher. I've taken actually one of his private classes. I learned so much from that class. And we're here to talk about just how the act of shooting, the act of putting rounds on target really applies to just about any discipline. And then also, because he is from Springfield Armory, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the new pistols that Springfield Armory has coming out right now. Rob, thank you very much. You are, by the way, our inaugural guest. So it all goes downhill from here, right?
No, or this is the bottom and it only gets better from here.
Yeah, that's exactly. This is our start. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So now you've been doing this for quite a while. You've been around, you've seen people come and go, and just a little bit about yourself for people who don't know and your background in this.
Well, born in Mesa, Arizona. Honestly, I don't remember not shooting. Earliest memories I have are a family, back then in the 60s. I was born in 61. In the 60s, we'd go on hiking and camping trips, and every weekend, we'd get out of the house and we'd go shooting. It's kind of what we did. I thought everybody did. Didn't realize everybody didn't do that. Came a fairly competent shot. Was a big kid, so I could shoot pretty much anything early on. Some point in my schooling, somewhere in the the early high school days to the mid high school days, I just became infatuated with handguns in particular, and then what we called at the time combat shooting. Right, so it was a generalized term, and it wasn't offensive to say the word combat. And both from the concept of the use of the guns for martial use, and then also from the competition. I was playing basketball and running track and things in school, and just competing came naturally to me. It's what I like to do. So when my interest in shooting came around, I just transferred that same energy. And I remember when I graduated high school, I got a job, I got an apartment, and 19 years old, and all I did every day was go to work or cast bullets and load ammo, and then on the weekend shoot, living the dream. That led to a couple good opportunities for me. And I look back now, right place at right time. So that kind of shooting was exploding here in the early 80s. And right at that time when I was becoming a pretty good shot, I'd won a couple nationals and a world championship. Springfield Armory started building 1911s. And I went to them, and it was David Reese, I'm sure, at a Bianchi Cup, and said, "Hey, I'm getting some new guns built up for me for next year, and I wonder if I could get a couple guns from you to build them on." At the time, everybody used Colts because that's all there really was, and I wanted to try something different. And I sent those guns to Bill Wilson, who was building my guns at the time. And I'll never forget, Bill said, "Oh man, why are you doing this? Why are you making me start with something I don't know about?" He says, "Hey, let's try this." And he built them and called me up, said, "Hey, these turned out pretty nice, actually. I'll send them to you." And that's what started my whole life with Springfield Armory. And then a few years later, they came in and said, "Listen, we want you to be full-time." So I became an employee of Springfield Armory in 1989 or 90. I can't remember right now, but had been associated with them before. And so I haven't had a real job since.
Yeah, you get paid to go to the range and send rounds down.
Yes, I do.
Range.
I am. If you like guns, I am living your dream.
Yeah. Now, one of the interesting things people don't know, a lot of people don't know about that is, in the early 80s when you were doing that, the stances that people were using and the way that people held their guns.
We did some stupid stuff.
But you and somebody else really changed all that, didn't you?
Well, yes and no. Brian Enos, interesting how that whole thing came together too, because we're two completely different people. but we both had the same interest. We wanted to learn about shooting, and we were both willing to put all our free time into it. We started getting interested in the competition, and the local level we were doing well and pretty much winning everything. And Brian went to a steel challenge, and I think it was 1980. I can't remember, it was 80, it might have been 81. I think it was 80. And he came back from that. And it's a funny story because he came back from the match and I didn't even know he was going. I didn't know anything about it. Couldn't have gone if I'd wanted to. And he said, hey, you got to check this out. I said, what? So I went and shot this match in California and I won 3-4 guns. I won some money. And I'm like, what? You can win things doing this? And I was stunned. And like, oh my God, I've never been more jealous of another human being in my life. And I said, wow, that sounds awesome. How do you think I'd done? He said, oh, you would have been horrible. And I said, why? Shots were too hard. You wouldn't be able to hit anything.
Yeah, you would have taken my stuff. Yeah.
He said, you would have got your ass kicked. And I said, oh, yeah. And nothing ever motivated me more to work towards shooting. And honestly, that was the moment that I said, okay, I'm going to learn how to do the things I can't do. So long story long, we started, I held the gun, thumb over the top. I come from revolvers, didn't have a consistent grip. I bent my arms because that's what everybody else did in the area, and was very inconsistent. I struggled. I put my finger on the trigger guard. I couldn't keep it there. I couldn't always get the thumb safety off of 1911. So we just started experimenting with things, and it really wasn't, the goal wasn't to change the world or create a new, I don't know, style or something like that. It was just addressing personal issues we had, and I came to a conclusion that I didn't really care what anybody else was doing. I didn't care what anybody else was telling me. I had to figure out ways to do it, and if it was different than what they were doing, so be it. And then my performances started getting better and better and better at that point. And that's the moment I realized, wow, there's so much more to this than just trying to follow this picture or this form that somebody else has. And that's really what started the experimenting, and the experimenting led to things we consider normal now. But at the time we were told it was revolutionary, and I didn't feel that way about it. It's just, well, I can't do it the way they're doing it, so I'm doing it this way. And that's kind of how it started. Oh, yeah, it was everything.
The isometric.
It was hand positions
and stuff like that.
It was a hand position. It was the arm positions. It was everything about the stance. Brian came from PPC. So Brian always favored accuracy over speed, and I came from the other side. I always favored speed over accuracy, and somewhere in the middle, we ended with our arms straight because we found we could hold the gun steadier that way. And then we stopped trying to relax. We started using certain kinds of tension. So there was a little bit of a pinch this way that nobody ever talked about, but there was also a closing here. And it evolved into the Weaver Sausalese clamshell. It turned into a whole different thing than everybody wanted to know what it was. And I'm like, well, I don't really know how to explain it. But yeah, we do this, and this. And it just looked different. So it made it seem revolutionary.
And you guys started winning everything. So, and that's all of a sudden, that was kind of the thing that, people say, there's something to this.
Yeah. Well, at that point, they say, why are they able to do things that we are not?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that brings up something we want to talk to you more about. I see in the comments on our social media every once in a while about those gamers or, other people talk about, tactical Timmies and stuff like that. And it's my contention that the process of hitting your target accurately under stress is the same if you're trying to go, bump yourself up a class in USPSA, or if you're trying to,
survive a gunfight.
Yeah.
They're trying to survive a gunfight. The reality, and it's funny, that when you really look at it, the competition world, much like football, is really just a formalized battle of two sides trying to take ground. A shooting competition is really just a test of a person's skills. And the shooting game was a test of speed balanced with accuracy in a dynamic environment where time mattered. Well, that's a description for a gunfight. It's also a description. It's also a description for a shooting competition, because in the beginning, the whole goal was to mimic skills and techniques that you need to be able to apply, and that's where the testing process is. Cooper started the whole thing.
Yeah, Cooper started
And
both of these.
he started all this. He started all this because he's the one that came and said, "Listen, we need to create a format and environment where we can test and see what works and doesn't." And that's really where IPSC began, and every other shooting sport that clicked out of it, whether it be Steel Challenge or Bianchi or PPC existed before that, but the reliance on speed over accuracy, and that one is what changed then. And USPSA came out of that, and IDPA came out of that. It's all came out of the same thing. It was formalizing the measurement methods for skills, techniques, and equipment.
Yeah, it's I do a little bit of teaching here, and I tell my students, if you really want to understand how you're going to react, we do a very simple. All we do is we just do a build drill, a very simple, 5 shots, hit the A zone from 10 yards. That's all I'm asking to do. But the minute I put a timer on the people, you watch that red mist just slowly settle over themselves, and they will have no clue what to happen. I could have a dancing elephant downrange and they wouldn't have seen it.
Right.
And people need to understand that your body doesn't know it's fake stress.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Seeklander calls it the brain scrambler, because an otherwise sensible, intelligent, thinking person stops doing those things. And I've seen it so many times that I guess you just take it for granted now. And then when you have someone say, train it with a timer, will get you killed on the streets. The point of the timer is to test you. It isn't to. I try to stress this to a student. It says, I don't know how fast is fast enough to survive, to win a gunfight. I really don't, because it might be slow and it might be fast. But since we don't know, and it could be a component of speed, well, let's try to figure out how to hit the targets well as fast as we can. And there's for me, it's not a pass-fail thing, right? There's better shooters are better. And the guy that can't hit the targets, we have to worry about hitting the targets. The guy that can hit the targets, we got to worry about hitting them faster. And there's a timer running in the gunfight. No gunfight has ever lasted forever.
Right.
They all have an end point. Some end up good, some end up bad. And it's just it's the same. It's a microcosm of what the competition world is. And generally, the competition has made dramatically harder than a gunfight might normally be. But that's to create a higher degree of stress. But the concept being, if I can hit 15-yard targets, I can hit 3-yard targets, right?
Yeah, I know, and you being one of the, let's be honest, you're one of the best practical shooters of all time. You just don't exist inside this gamer bubble. You take what you know and you apply it to some of I know some of the troops out there that are doing that literally on the tip of the spear.
Most of them. So an interesting thing occurred is those groups started contacting me and would say, hey, we want to figure out why you're better than I am, or we are. I said, I don't know that I'm better. I'm better than you. We do. We know we can't do the things we see you do. So we want to know how you do them when you come to a class. And I said, of course it would. It'd be an honor to do that. And those groups to work with, it is an honor to work with them. It is a privilege. But their goal was to know the things that they don't know. Wasn't we follow this mode blindly and just accept what the outcome is. They said we can't accept that. We need better performance. We've found we need better performance. And they said, we're interested on not necessarily in the application of what you're using, but what are the techniques you're doing? He says, well, there's no magic to it. It's a real simple system. If you want to know what it is, mastery of techniques becomes skills. Mm-hmm. A talented shooter is capable of using those skills and performing on demand. It's that simple. That's really the whole process. And the rest of it's programming. I mean, it's really that simple. If you don't have the skills, we can't do anything more with you. We have to go back, and almost every shooter, even good shooters that I ever work with at an intense personal level, we always have that moment where I say, well, the real problem here is we got to teach you how to shoot.
Yeah.
Some people won't understand that, where they won't know what that means. I know Travis didn't understand, and now he can explain it perfectly. And it's just an interesting environment. And the fact that those guys want to know, I'll be honest with you, when we go out in the flat range and we're shooting competitions, they're just trying to beat each other. They're all A-type personalities, and they want to be the best. So they all want to know how to be better than the next guy. But the application side of it is learning how to perform instead of this level, learning how to perform for this level, and how to do it effortlessly. That's the thing.
Right.
I mean, I always look at it this way. You watch Usain Bolt run. Does he look like he's trying very hard?
No, it just
he
flows
doesn't.
like water.
It doesn't. It looks effortless. But I guarantee you, he is efforting. He is trying really, really hard. He's not trying to not do it, but he's so good, and it's so natural. And the natural probably has some, what do you call it? Some basic fundamental coordinations and skills. But he has programmed his body to work in that manner without trying. So the effort he's putting forth is huge, but the mental strain on him to do it is minimal. Probably can do it, effortlessly every time.
You bring up something that's always been a little bit of my hobby. You see people say, "Well, I know how to shoot." Well, what they know how to do is, pick up the gun, pull the trigger, and make it go bang. What those troops that you were working with, they're willing to test themselves to the point of failure and understand where their limitations are, and then correct those limitations. And that involves a lack of ego, that you're saying, okay, I'm not actually as good at this as I think I am.
You have to destroy the ego for improvement to occur. It's vital in every class and every student. You have to shatter their egos. If they won't turn them off, you have to kill the egos, because at some point it isn't about, me presenting my concept and proving to you that you want it. You have to be in a place where you're receptive to trying to get better, because I don't know what's going to make you better. I haven't seen you shoot for a while. I don't know what you're messing up right now. Well, exactly. And so do I. That's the truest answer of all of them. Is over my career, my biggest weakness is I'm just not a good enough shot. I need to be a better shot. And I now realize that will never end. I'll always be in the search to be better. No matter how old I get, it's always going to get to be better. And those guys are willing to just shut their egos off. They want to beat each other, but when it becomes learning time, there isn't a well, I'm not going to do it that way because that's not the way we were taught. They were never like that. All those upper level guys, no matter which country or which unit they were all like, okay, sponges, tell us what you want us to do. At that point, it becomes an issue of the knowledge isn't the problem. I mean, you can tell anybody. Here it is, ready for everything. Hold the gun real tight, point it at the target, maintain that, pull the trigger as fast as you can, repeat the process, right? It's really it. There you go. Now get really, really good at that. That's the hard part. The hard part isn't to understand it. Everybody can write it down, but to actually get to the point where you can effortlessly execute the techniques takes, I don't know what, I ask students all the time, how many repetitions of an action does it take for you to memorize it? I've heard answers from 700 to tens of thousands, if not millions. I can tell you my experience. Some people pick improvements up immediately, and some never do. So I don't know what the right number is.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It's tough. Yeah, or if we're easy, everybody could do it. Everybody have that wall of trophies behind you there. Yeah. So of the four things.
You mean these right here?
Yeah, those trophies there. Yeah, the multiple Bianchi Cups, the multiple World Championships. They don't call them the great one because he found a box of Cracker Jacks. Okay. So
you don't know. Maybe they are.
Maybe you did. I don't know. Yeah. So I remember a while back, you really caused a little bit of a sensation on the internet when you did a video that says sights are useless, aiming is useless. Do you remember that video you did?
So yeah,
of sights, grips, of sights, stance, grip, and trigger. Which one's the most important?
Oh, grip. Gripping and controlling the gun. The matter of fact, you don't have to pull the trigger well if you hold the gun well enough. Honestly, if you imagine this, if you put the gun in a vise and the vise was immovable and you pointed it at the target, you could do anything you want to the trigger and it won't move the gun, right? So the trigger becomes a second component. The first one is gripping and holding the gun. And if you want to shoot fast, you have to use a bunch of tension. This relax thing doesn't work. You have to use enough tension. Now, whether you're efforting to create that tension, I mean, I know people seek gun stronger than you and I can and not try, because he's trained himself to effortlessly control the gun and hold the gun. And if you hold the gun well and can pull the trigger without moving the gun, then aiming comes into matter. And the whole point of that thing, there was like 5 million views on that thing last time I looked at the it's an interesting story behind the whole thing, because we're doing an introduction for the Saint rifle, and whoever the entity was that was there came up to me and said, "Hey, you did a piece with this one person. You told her not to aim." I'm like, "What? I would never tell you not to aim." So then you told her she didn't have to aim. No, I said there's no point in her worrying about aiming if she's going to jerk the gun out of alignment every time she shoots. So what do you mean by that? He says, well, exactly what I said. If you have the gun in alignment and then move it when you shoot it, it didn't matter if you aimed in the first point, because what you did previous to that element is all defeated the moment you move the gun out of alignment and then shoot. It says, well, can you explain that? It says, well, I think I just did. It says, no, we want to do a video piece of this. That, like, man, I don't have time right now. I'm running this big event. We've got writers and people from all over the country. We spent a lot of money. And they're like, oh, come on, it'll just take a couple minutes. Just go down range and just explain it again. I'm like, I can't. I got to do this other thing. So I walk off and I come back. And my boss comes and say, can you go out with those guys and just try to explain what it is they're asking me? I said, yeah, of course. The boss asked me.
Sure, boss.
Sure, boss. I'd love to. There's nothing I'd rather do. And so while walking down to the front of the bay, and I just had 4 or 5 partial magazines with me. And I think we just introduced the optical sight, the OSP versions of the XDMs. So I think that's the gun I had in there. And they walked down. I started talking to them to try to lay some groundwork, thinking they're going to edit this thing to 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I said, let's walk down range and explain them to them. And if people say you seem like you're a little annoyed, a little pissed off, says I need to be doing something else, and they wanted to do this, and then they made me do this. So, I mean, I was like that. Says, no, that came across. Says, well, I thought they were going to edit it, and do 30-second segment on it. And they ran the whole thing from beginning to end. And that's when I went into it. Said, well, the whole problem is that people think it's about, aiming. And aiming's 10% of the equation. It's the easiest part. Even a beginner, the first time you hand them a gun and you explain this thing sits here, right? Front sight sits here, and the rear sight goes here, and then you put that on the middle of the target. Everybody gets that immediately, and right. You know what? Everybody can do. It's intuitive. Yeah, it's simple. The part they can't do is hold the gun properly and can't pull the trigger properly, and that's what led to it. And I think whoever that was, they put aiming is useless on there as clickbait, and it worked because it worked. But if you really listen to it, I never say don't aim. I just say if you can't fire the gun without moving it, it's pointless to aim.
Your aiming doesn't matter. You're not going to hit what you're aiming at.
Well, might as well close your eyes.
Right. Now, that was the introduction you're saying of the XDM OSP. And as we're doing this video, there's something new coming up from Springfield Armory, something I know you've been really involved with.
Oh, this has been the hardest secret for me to keep. I just naturally want to say, look at this, look at this, look at this. So we just released our Echelon pistol, which is our new full-size, polymer frame strikers fired gun. I've been working on it for concept 4 to 5 years when it was a drawing on a whiteboard.
Let's stop there for a second. Okay. You've been involved with this. This isn't something that some country in the Balkans came up with. This is something you personally have come up with.
Oh yeah, we were sitting in a room, and we have 20 engineers, some of theirs, some ours, our marketing people, our ownership, their ownership, and me. And they say, okay, what do we want to build next? And I'm thinking I'm thinking we should do a variant on the XDM. No. We're thinking deeper than that. We're thinking further down the road. We're thinking of something else. What are we missing? What do we need? What can't we do with the platform we have now, or what do we want to do differently? And he took the whiteboard that we'd been working on something with and wiped it clean. Says, let's start from here. What do we all collectively
Literally
want?
a white sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper.
It's exactly what it was. It was literally, and remember, this is 4 to 5 years ago. So there's a blank board, and everybody starts, well, we want it to be a striker-fied polymer pistol. Okay, cool. Write that down. It says we want, the ability to be able to use a interchangeable chassis that we can then change the size of the grips, the colors of the grips, the textures of the grips, everything that's a benefit of that. Let's keep our interchangeable back strap so we can change the size and the grip angle. Let's make a trigger mechanism. And this is really where most of my involvement was. It actually became an interior joke. We'd all meet together. It says, okay, so Rob, what problems do you have with the trigger this time? What do you want to do with the trigger this time?
Yeah, let's talk to
And
Rob.
honestly, you could ask people internally. They're like, oh God, Rob's here again. That means we're going to talk about the trigger the whole damn time. And a bunch of geniuses came up with some great concepts, but there was this board, and we start mapping out the future. And then that gets adjusted for a year, right? For a year, we're talking about the concepts of what it's going to be. And then we say, okay, it's time to start making it. This is about 3 years ago. Like, okay, where do we start? Well, let's start with the slide assembly. We start working on the slide assembly design. What kind of barrel do you want? What locking mechanism do we want to have? What kind of striker mechanism do we want to have? And one of the first things that came up was, remember, optical sights, love or hate them, they are here. And at that point, the problem we had was, how do we adapt an existing gun to take an optical sight?
Right.
Every
yeah.
gun,
Everybody's. Yeah.
Every
Even
gun
still.
we've done. Oh yeah, every gun we've done up till the Echelon, the gun existed before the concept of putting an optical sight. So how do we adapt it to do it? One of the first lineups has to be easily mounts all popular sights, right? Which is like saying, hey, make it everything for everybody. Oh, we'll address that later. That'll be easy. We'll do that later. That's what it started with. So we wanted the optical sight to sit low. We wanted it mounted in a system. The funny part is how it all came together later. We want it mounted in a way that we can do away with plates if at all possible. At the time, what we were thinking is, we'll only be able to mount a few different sights that way, but maybe we can get away with that. So let's move on to the next thing. We wanted to get rid of the grip safety, and I don't have a problem with grip safeties, but we do recognize there are a number of people who don't like them. So instead of fighting the war and say, hey, an XDM grip safety actually blocks the sear, it's a better grip safety than 1911 grip safety is. It actually is more functional. It's a better part. We said, no, we're going to get rid of the grip safety. I said, okay. So then the safety not. I was going to say, can I say safety Nazis? Is that a?
Well, you just
term?
did. So
Okay. All right. Pretend like, if you're offended, don't pretend I'm going to say that. Said, well, we got to have, make sure that this thing doesn't suffer from any sort of problems with going off when they're dropped or shook or any sort of. So the people working on the trigger mechanism came up with, and 1911 handles it with a half-cock notch. If you're familiar with how a 1911 works, if the hammer should ever fall off of the striker or off of the sear, it would catch the half-cock notch, which would keep it from ever reaching the firing pin and never going off. And Springfield Armory 1911s actually have a third level of that in them to create the safety element. Well, the guys designing the trigger group added what actively functions like a secondary sear. I don't know if anybody else has anything like this or not. And that was a lot of work, gotta tell you, to put that component in. But it adds a level of safety to the gun, and I guess the ability for it to pass abuse. Maybe abuse is a good word, because if you handle the gun right, you would never find a circumstance where it's going to fall on the ground or hit something. Well, let's say it does. So that is a huge component. So we had the basic outlines for what the gun should be. Now we started working on hard parts. Okay, what do we want? Well, we want the line of the board to be as low as it can possibly be. And so that was designed in. So we had a picture of something that looked kind of like a stick drawing, right? right? And basically that's where it all kind of started. And then
Yeah.
the pin system to be able to, the viz system that locks the sights in. I mean, you can hit the sight, most sights on the gun with a hammer, and the sight's going to break before it's going to move if you've tightened the screws down. So that's really where it came from.
There's a lot of people, and that I meet, talk, they're like, oh, Springfield Army, this Springfield Army, and that. I'm going, this to me looks like the very first full size, pistol, service pistol that was designed from the ground up to be optic sight first.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to drop it on there without having to grill, mine, whatever, or drill, grind, all
right.
the things out of it. It's going to just drop in. Yeah, it's a very interesting pistol. I think it's going to be a big success for Springfield Army. And I think you guys did a great job on it. So what's next for you after this?
Well, I'm going back to the shop. We're working. It never ends. Tomorrow morning, I'm going pistol shooting. I'm gonna do some more testing. Just because we've released the gun doesn't mean that the process stops at that point.
Always you gotta come out with that threaded barrel version and the FDE version.
It's out, yeah.
All
that's probably done fundamentally. It's just when can we get to it all? It's really the testing process. The way we do it now never ends. So I have a testing group that goes out and we go shoot everything. And today was rifles. Tomorrow we're shooting pistols. If it sounds awesome, it is. And I'm testing some Prodigy stuff tomorrow, and I'm working on an echelon component. And then I go back to the factory and we start having meetings on the next thing we're doing.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Rob, you know what? Our time here is running out. I want to thank you so much for doing this. It's been a great interview. More success. Let's add another couple dozen trophies to the back there. Build another room on your house. To keep them all. You'll be.
There's some more over there.
Stuff like that. Hey, I want to thank Rob Leatham for joining us. And hey, as always, stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you at the range.